The Galactic Council chamber fell silent when Commander Sarah Chen walked through the massive doors. She was small by human standards, barely reaching 5 feet and 4 inches, but she moved with a confidence that made the alien delegates shift in their seats. Behind her came representatives from 36 different Deathworld species, each one more terrifying than the last. The Vorn diplomat, a creature made of living crystal that could survive in volcanic heat, clicked its mineral teeth nervously. The Krath ambassador, whose species breathed methane and acid, pulled its respiratory mask tighter. Even the mighty Thurok delegation, beings of pure muscle covered in armor like scales, seemed uncomfortable. High Counselor Velix, a fragile being from a low-gravity world with perfect weather, spoke first. His voice was like wind chimes, soft and delicate. "Commander Chen, we understand you wish to address the Council regarding the swarm threat. However, we must express our concerns about your coalition." Sarah smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "My coalition, High Counselor, is the only reason this council still exists." The delegates murmured among themselves. The swarm had appeared 3 years ago, emerging from the void between galaxies. They consumed everything in their path. Planets, stars, entire solar systems disappeared into their endless hunger. The civilized species of the galaxy, those from gentle worlds with mild climates and stable environments, had no answer. Their weapons were designed for small conflicts, their ships built for comfort rather than war. Then the humans came. Sarah remembered the first contact 3 years ago. The Council had dismissed humanity as primitive savages from a death world. Earth, they said, was a planet of horrors. Extreme temperatures, violent weather, deadly radiation from its own sun, tectonic instability, and an atmosphere that was slowly poisoning everything on its surface. How anything could survive there, let alone develop intelligence, was beyond their understanding. What they did not understand was that Earth did not produce survivors. Earth produced fighters. "The swarm has taken 47 worlds in the past month," Sarah said, her voice cutting through the chamber like a blade. "Your defensive lines are broken. Your fleet is scattered. You have 3 months, maybe 4, before they reach the core systems." High Counselor Velix's large eyes blinked rapidly, a sign of extreme distress in his species. "We are aware of the situation, Commander. That is why we have called this emergency session." "And yet you hesitate to accept our help." Sarah gestured to the beings behind her. "Look at them, Counselor. The Vorn who build their cities inside active volcanoes. The Krath who swim in seas of acid. The Thurok whose gravity is so strong that a fall of 2 meters would kill any of you instantly. The Nexari who evolved on a world where the very plants hunt animals. The Dreth whose atmosphere is liquid nitrogen." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Every species in my coalition comes from a death world. Every single one of us learned to fight before we learned to walk. We are what you need, but you are too afraid to accept us." A delegate from the Melori Union, a species that resembled floating jellyfish, pulsed with agitation. "Commander Chen, with respect, your coalition includes species that have been at war with each other for centuries. The Vorn and the Krath have a blood feud that spans generations. The Thurok once tried to conquer the Nexari homeworld. How can such a diverse and hostile group possibly work together?" Sarah turned to face the Melori delegate directly. "Because I told them to." The chamber erupted in confused murmurs. The concept was alien to these civilized species. They operated on consensus, on careful negotiation, on centuries of diplomatic protocols. The idea that someone could simply command obedience from such powerful and hostile beings was incomprehensible. General Kreth of the Thurok stepped forward. His voice was like grinding boulders. "The human speaks truth. When the swarm came to our world, we fought alone. We killed millions of them, but millions more came. We were dying. Then this small creature appeared with her fleet. She looked at our world, at our warriors, and she said, 'You are wasting yourselves. Follow me, and I will show you how to fight.'" The Thurok general paused, something like respect in his deep-set eyes. We laughed. A Thurok warrior does not follow, we conquer. But then she challenged our greatest champion to single combat. High Counselor Velix made a sound of disbelief. A human fought a Thurok warrior. That is impossible. The Thurok are 3 times your size and 10 times your strength. General Kreth nodded slowly. She broke his arm in 17 places before he surrendered. We learned then what it means to come from Earth. Humans do not fight fairly. They fight to win. Sarah said nothing. The memory of that fight was still fresh. The Thurok champion had been massive, over 3 meters of muscle and natural armor. But he fought like his ancestors, with honor and tradition. Sarah had spent her life studying every martial art humanity had ever created, learning from cultures that had refined the art of killing for thousands of years. The Thurok had expected a battle. He got a dissection. Each species in my coalition has a similar story, Sarah said. The Vorn joined after I walked into their volcanic capital without protective gear and negotiated for 6 hours while my skin blistered. The Krath joined after I reprogrammed their defense satellites to actually defend, saving 3 of their colony worlds. The Nexari joined because I was the first outsider to survive their jungle for a full day. She stepped closer to the Council's raised platform. I did not unite these species through diplomacy. I earned their respect by being harder, tougher, and more willing to suffer than any of them. That is the human way. We do not quit. We do not surrender. We endure. The chamber was silent now. Even the environmental system seemed to have grown quiet. The swarm has never faced anything like us, Sarah continued. They evolved to consume peaceful worlds, to overwhelm defenders who fight defensively. They do not understand aggression. They do not understand the concept of a species that would rather die than submit. High Counselor Velix seemed to gather his courage. Commander Chen, even if we accept your coalition's help, what can 37 species do against the swarm? They number in the trillions. Their fleet is larger than all the ships in the galaxy combined. Sarah's smile returned, and this time it was sharp enough to cut. You are thinking like prey, Counselor. You see their numbers and you want to hide, but I look at their numbers and I see an opportunity. She activated her personal holographic projector, and suddenly the chamber was filled with a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy. Red dots represented swarm territory, spreading like a disease across the western spiral arm. Blue dots marked Council space, shrinking with every passing day. The swarm is vast, but it has weaknesses. They think as one, act as one. They cannot adapt quickly to new situations. They have never lost because they have never faced real opposition. Sarah highlighted several points on the map. I propose we change that. My coalition has been fighting the swarm for 18 months. We have won 34 battles, reclaimed 12 worlds, and destroyed over 800 million swarm organisms. We have learned how they think, how they communicate, how they feed. And we have developed weapons specifically designed to kill them. The map shifted, showing detailed tactical information. Battle plans, supply routes, fleet positions. It was the most comprehensive military strategy the Council had ever seen. Give me command of your remaining forces, Sarah said. Not to hide, not to delay, to attack. The swarm expects you to flee, to cower in your core systems until they consume you. Instead, we will strike at the heart of their territory. We will burn their breeding grounds. We will destroy their queens. And we will show them that the galaxy has teeth. High Counselor Velix looked at the map, then at the Deathworld species standing behind Sarah, then back at the small human woman who spoke of interstellar war like she was ordering lunch. Commander Chen, he said slowly, you are asking us to place our entire civilization in the hands of a species we met 3 years ago. A species that, by your own admission, solves problems through violence. Yes, Sarah said simply, because violence is what the swarm understands, and we speak it fluently. The vote took 3 days. Sarah spent those 3 days in the observation deck of her flagship, the Defiance. It was a human vessel, built in the orbital shipyards of Mars, but modified with technology from a dozen different Deathworld species. The engines were craft design, capable of burning through atmospheres that would vaporize any Council ship. The armor was Thurok alloy, forged in the crushing pressure of their homeworld. The weapons were a mixture of everything her coalition had developed, from Vorn plasma lances to Nexari biotorpedoes. The ship was ugly by galactic standards. Council vessels were elegant, flowing things of crystal and light. The Defiance looked like it had been assembled from scrap metal by beings who had never heard of aesthetic design. Every surface was functional. Every system was redundant. It was a ship built for one purpose: to survive anything and keep fighting. "You should eat something, Commander." Sarah turned to find Dr. Yuki Tanaka standing behind her. The ship's medical officer was one of the few humans on board who could match Sarah's stubbornness. They had served together for 15 years, since before the swarm, since before first contact. "Not hungry," Sarah said. "You have not eaten in 36 hours. That is not healthy even for you." Yuki walked to stand beside her, looking out at the Council station hanging in space below them, worried about the vote. "No," Sarah's voice was flat. "I am worried about what happens after. If they say yes, I will be responsible for the largest military operation in galactic history. If they say no, I will have to watch them die." Yuki was quiet for a moment. "You know, when I first met you, I thought you were the most arrogant person I had ever encountered. You acted like the entire universe was a problem you could solve if you just tried hard enough. And now I know you are the most arrogant person I have ever encountered." Yuki smiled slightly. "But you might also be right. I have watched you unite species that should be impossible to unite. I have watched you win battles that should be impossible to win. If anyone can save this galaxy, it is you." Sarah shook her head. "It is not about me. It is about what we represent. Every species in the coalition, every soldier, every pilot, every engineer, they all come from worlds that tried to kill them. They survived because they refused to accept that survival was impossible. That is what the Council does not understand. They think we are powerful because we are strong. We are powerful because we are stubborn." A communication alert interrupted their conversation. Sarah activated the holographic display with a gesture. The face of a Council aide appeared, nervous and uncertain. "Commander Chen, the Council has reached a decision. They request your presence in the main chamber." Sarah straightened her uniform. It was human military design, dark blue with silver trim, but she had added patches from each coalition species. A Thurok warrior crest, a Vorn crystal shard, a Krath chemical symbol, 37 patches representing 37 worlds that had chosen to follow her. "Time to see if the galaxy wants to live," she said. The Council chamber was packed. Every delegate was present, along with hundreds of observers from across civilized space. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife, as humans like to say. High Counselor Velik stood at his podium, looking more tired than Sarah had ever seen him. The past 3 days had clearly been difficult. Whatever debates had occurred behind closed doors, they had taken their toll. "Commander Chen," he began, his voice carrying across the silent chamber, "the Galactic Council has considered your proposal with great care. We have examined your battle records, your strategic plans, and the testimonies of your coalition members. We have also considered the alternative." He paused, and for a moment Sarah thought he might collapse from the weight of what he was about to say. "We have always prided ourselves on our civilization, our culture, our peaceful nature. We believed that these qualities made us superior to those who came from difficult worlds. We see now that we were wrong." A murmur ran through the chamber. In the thousands of years of Council history, no High Counselor had ever admitted such a thing publicly. The swarm does not care about our culture or our achievements. They see only food. Against such an enemy, our peaceful nature is not a virtue. It is a death sentence. Velix straightened, seeming to find new strength. Therefore, by unanimous vote, the Galactic Council hereby grants Commander Sarah Chen full authority over all military assets and strategic decisions for the duration of the war against the swarm. The chamber erupted. Some delegates cheered, relief evident on their alien faces. Others seemed uncertain, even fearful. They were placing their lives in the hands of a human, a species that had been known to the galaxy for only 3 years. Sarah walked to the central platform, her boots clicking against the polished floor. She looked up at the assembled delegates, meeting their eyes one by one. "I will not lie to you," she said. "What is coming will be hard. Many will die. Worlds will burn. The swarm is the greatest threat this galaxy has ever faced, and defeating them will require sacrifices that most of you cannot imagine." She paused, letting the words sink in. "But here is what I promise. I will not waste your lives. Every death will have meaning. Every battle will bring us closer to victory. And when this is over, you will know that you fought for something worth fighting for." General Kreth stepped forward, his massive form dwarfing Sarah. "The Thurok stand ready, Commander." Ambassador Vix of the Vorn followed, her crystalline body catching the light. The Vorn forge burns hot for war. One by one, the coalition representatives pledged their support. The Krath, the Nexari, the Dreth, species that had been at war for generations stood together, united by a human commander who had shown them what they could become. Sarah turned back to the council. "I need 3 things. First, all intelligence data on swarm movements and behavior. Second, full access to your supply networks and manufacturing capabilities. Third, the location of every ship, weapon, and soldier you have." High Counselor Velix nodded. "You will have everything we can provide." "Good, because we start tomorrow." The next 2 weeks were a blur of activity. Sarah worked 20-hour days, reviewing data, coordinating with coalition commanders, and developing battle plans. The Defiance became the command center for the largest military operation in galactic history. The Council's intelligence was more comprehensive than Sarah had expected. They had been studying the swarm for years, cataloging their behavior, mapping their movements. What they lacked was the ability to use that information offensively. Their military doctrine was entirely defensive, built around the concept of holding territory rather than taking it. Sarah changed that. "The swarm operates on a hive structure," she explained to her assembled commanders. The war room of the Defiance was filled with representatives from every coalition species, plus a handful of council military officers who had volunteered to serve. Each cluster is controlled by a queen, which receives orders from higher queens, all the way up to the prime queen in the center of their territory. She pointed to the holographic display, where a complex web of connections showed the swarm's command structure. "The Council's strategy has been to fight the drones, the foot soldiers. That is like trying to empty an ocean with a cup. For every drone you kill, 1,000 more are born. But the queens are different. They take years to mature, and each one is irreplaceable." Admiral Yesik of the Council fleet raised a tentacle. "Commander, the queens are protected by billions of drones. Any attack on them would be suicide." "For your ships, yes. Your vessels are designed for comfort and long-range travel. They cannot survive close combat." Sarah smiled. "My ships are designed for close combat. We have been practicing it for millions of years." She brought up another display showing a modified assault carrier. "This is the Reaper-class carrier, based on the human design but modified with technology from the entire coalition. Thurok armor, Krath engines, Vorn weapons, Nexari biological systems. It is the ugliest ship in the galaxy and the deadliest." "We will hit the swarm at multiple points simultaneously," Sarah continued. While their drones are responding to faint attacks, our main force will drive straight for their queens. Kill the queens and the drones become disorganized. Without direction, they are nothing but animals. General Kreth rumbled his approval. A bold strategy, the Thurok approve. Bold is not enough, Sarah said. We need to be fast, precise, and ruthless. The swarm has never faced a coordinated assault. They do not know how to respond to aggression. We will teach them. She looked around the room at her commanders. Aliens of every shape and size, from worlds that would kill any council species in minutes. They were predators, survivors, fighters, and they were hers. Operation Hammer begins in 72 hours, she said. Make sure your forces are ready. The first battle of Operation Hammer was at a system the swarm had designated simply as Food Source 4471. The council called it the Velari system, home to 2 billion sentient beings who had evacuated only days before the swarm arrived. Sarah watched from the command deck of the Defiance as her fleet emerged from hyperspace. 300 ships, a mixture of coalition and council vessels, faced a swarm force of over 2,000 organic craft. The enemy ships were living things, grown rather than built, their forms twisted and nightmarish. All ships report ready, Commander, her tactical officer reported. Lieutenant Yun was another human, one of the few hundred who had joined Sarah's cause. The entire human population of Earth was only 8 billion, a tiny number by galactic standards, but every single one of them had volunteered for the war. Begin the approach, Sarah ordered. Diamond formation, Thurok ships take point. The massive Thurok dreadnoughts moved forward, their shields absorbing the first wave of swarm fire. Behind them came the Vorn cruisers, their plasma weapons heating up for the initial volley. The Krath fighters swarmed between the larger ships, their pilots breathing their toxic atmosphere as they prepared for close combat. The swarm reacted exactly as Sarah had predicted. Their drones rushed forward in a wave, trying to overwhelm the coalition fleet through sheer numbers. It was their only tactic, the only strategy they had ever needed. Now, Sarah said quietly. The coalition fleet split apart, opening gaps in their formation. Through those gaps came the human vessels, small and fast, loaded with the modified nuclear weapons that had become humanity's signature contribution to the war effort. The bombs were designed to penetrate the swarm's organic hulls before detonating, turning each ship into a miniature sun. The first wave of detonations lit up the void. Hundreds of swarm ships vanished in nuclear fire. The survivors reeled, their formation collapsing as they tried to adapt to a threat they had never encountered. Push forward, Sarah commanded. Do not give them time to reorganize. The battle became a dance of destruction. The coalition ships moved in perfect coordination, each species covering the weaknesses of the others. Thurok armor absorbed hits that would have destroyed any other vessel. Vorn plasma cut through swarm hulls like paper. Krath fighters darted through the chaos, their pilots laughing as they breathed air that would dissolve a human lung. And at the center of it all, the human ships kept firing their nuclear payload. Commander, Lieutenant Yun called out, we have located the Queen's vessel. It is trying to retreat to the planet. Sarah looked at the tactical display. The Queen's ship was massive, a biological mountain surrounded by thousands of defender drones. Any normal attack would be suicide. All Nexari assault teams prepare for boarding action. Thurok first wave, clear us a path. Sarah stood from her command chair. I am going with them. Dr. Tanaka's voice came through the communication system immediately. Sarah, no. You are too valuable to risk in a boarding action. I am not asking, Yuki. Sarah was already moving toward the hangar deck. If I am going to send people to die, I need to be willing to die with them. That is how this works. The boarding shuttles were Nexari design, built to survive the hostile environment of their jungle homeworld. They could punch through almost anything, including the organic hull of a swarm ship. Sarah joined a mixed team of Nexari warriors and human marines. The Nexari were terrifying to look at, insectoid creatures with razor-sharp limbs and compound eyes that could see in complete darkness. Their homeworld had made them perfect predators. "Commander," the Nexari team leader clicked, "it is an honor to hunt with you." "The honor is mine, Hunt Master Crix." Sarah checked her weapons, a human-made assault rifle and a Thurok combat knife. "Remember, the Queen is the target, everything else is secondary." The shuttle launched, screaming through the void toward the Queen's ship. Around them the battle raged. Ships exploded. Drones swarmed. The Thurok dreadnoughts carved a bloody path through the defenders, their massive guns firing continuously. The shuttle hit the Queen's ship's hull with a bone-jarring impact. Sarah felt the impact absorbers strain as the vessel punched through the organic material. Then they were inside, surrounded by darkness and the wet, poolsing walls of a living ship. "Move," Sarah ordered. The boarding team spread out, their weapons illuminating the alien corridors. The inside of a swarm ship was a nightmare made real, all twisted flesh and strange fluids. The air was thick with spores, but the team's suits protected them. The first swarm drones came at them from the darkness. They were smaller than their spaceborne cousins, designed for internal defense. Fast and vicious, with claws that could cut through standard armor. They were not fast enough. The Nexari moved like water, their bladed limbs cutting through the drones with surgical precision. The humans provided covering fire, their weapons designed to penetrate the drone's natural armor. Within seconds, the corridor was clear. "Queen Chamber is 200 meters ahead," Sarah said, checking her scanner. "Heavy resistance expected." They pushed forward, fighting through wave after wave of defenders. Sarah lost track of how many she killed. Her rifle grew hot in her hands. Her knife became slick with swarm blood, but she kept moving, kept fighting. The Queen Chamber was a vast space at the heart of the ship, and the Queen herself was there, a massive creature that filled most of the room. She was covered in defensive drones, thousands of them, forming a living shield around her bloated form. "Grenades," Sarah ordered. The team threw everything they had: fire grenades, concussion grenades, bioweapons that the Nexari had designed to target swarm physiology. The defensive drones died by the hundreds, clearing a path to the Queen. Sarah ran forward, her knife in her hand. The Queen turned toward her, intelligence in its alien eyes. It had never seen a human before. It did not understand what she was. It understood when her knife plunged into its brain. The effect was immediate. Throughout the system, the swarm drones stopped fighting. Without their Queen's direction, they became confused, attacking each other as often as the coalition ships. The battle that had been desperately close suddenly became a massacre. "All forces, this is Commander Chen," Sarah transmitted. "The Queen is dead, finish them." The coalition ships fell on the disorganized swarm with savage efficiency. By the time Sarah's shuttle returned to the Defiance, it was over. 2,000 enemy ships destroyed. The first major victory against the swarm in galactic history. Dr. Tanaka was waiting in the hangar bay, her face pale. "You are covered in alien blood." "It will wash off." Sarah was exhausted, running on adrenaline and determination. "What is our status?" 37 ships lost, 12,000 casualties across all species. Yuki looked at her tablet. The swarm lost over 2,000 ships and an estimated 4 million drones plus their Queen. Sarah nodded slowly. The numbers were better than she had hoped, worse than she had wanted. 12,000 beings had died following her orders. She would remember every one of them. "Send word to the Council," she said. "The first battle of Operation Hammer is a victory. We move to the next target in 6 hours." The next 6 months were a blur of battles. Sarah led her fleet from one end of swarm territory to the other, striking at queens wherever they could be found. Each battle was different. Each one required new tactics and new sacrifices. At the Battle of the Krath Nebula, the Coalition faced their first ambush. The swarm had learned from their defeats, setting a trap that should have destroyed the entire fleet. Instead, Sarah ordered her ships into the heart of the ambush, turning the trap into a close-quarters brawl where the Deathworld species excelled. They lost 80 ships but killed 4 queens. At the Siege of World 7742, the swarm tried to use a planet's population as hostages. Sarah evacuated 20 million beings under fire, her ships taking hits while transports loaded with refugees escaped to safety. Then she destroyed the swarm fleet and the queen that had ordered the atrocity. At the defense of Thurok Prime, the swarm attempted their largest offensive yet, sending a fleet of 10,000 ships against the coalition's strongest ally. Sarah arrived with reinforcements just as the planetary shields were failing. The battle lasted 3 days. When it was over, the Thurok homeworld was safe, and 2 more queens were dead. Slowly, inevitably, the tide began to turn. The war had lasted 18 months when the swarm made their first attempt at communication. Sarah was in the middle of planning the next offensive when the signal came through. It was crude by galactic standards, a simple mathematical pattern that all spacefaring species recognized as a request for dialogue. The Coalition fleet had been preparing to assault a major swarm-breeding world when the transmission arrived. "Commander," Lieutenant Yun reported, "the signal is coming from the planet. It appears to be a surrender offer." The command deck fell silent. In all of recorded history, the swarm had never communicated with anyone. They consumed, they destroyed, they did not negotiate. "Put it through," Sarah ordered. The holographic display flickered, and for the first time the galaxy saw a swarm queen speak. She was different from the others, larger and more complex, with multiple eyes that seemed to process information at incredible speed. When she spoke, her voice was a synthesis of sounds taken from 100 different species. "Human commander," the queen said, "you have killed 37 of my sisters. You have destroyed breeding grounds that took centuries to establish. You fight in ways we do not understand. We wish to discuss terms." Sarah leaned forward in her command chair. "What terms would you propose?" "We will withdraw from all territory we have taken in the past 5 years. We will return the planets we have consumed. We ask only that you stop hunting us." The queen's many eyes focused on Sarah. "We are not used to being prey." The offer was more than anyone could have hoped for. Hundreds of worlds returned, trillions of lives saved. The war ended without further bloodshed. It was everything the Council had dreamed of. Sarah was silent for a long moment, then she spoke, "No." The queen's eyes flickered with something that might have been confusion. "No, we offer you everything you have fought for." "You offer to pause," Sarah said, "to retreat, rebuild, and return when you think we have grown weak. You have consumed millions of worlds across thousands of years. You will never stop. It is not in your nature." She stood from her chair. "My nature is the same. I do not stop either." "Then you choose war," the queen said. "You choose death for billions." "I choose victory," Sarah replied. "Complete and final. You will not retreat and recover. You will not threaten this galaxy again. I will hunt every one of your queens until none remain. I will burn your breeding grounds. I will find your prime queen and I will kill her myself." The transmission ended. Later, High Counselor Velix contacted Sarah directly. His holographic image appeared in her private quarters, his expression troubled. "Commander Chen, the Council is concerned about your rejection of the swarm's offer. Many believe you should have at least considered negotiations." Sarah poured herself a drink, a human tradition she had maintained even among aliens who did not understand the concept. "With respect, High Counselor, the Council does not understand war." "And you do." "I understand the swarm." Sarah turned to face the hologram. They are not a civilization. They are not a species that can change or grow or learn to coexist. They are hunger given form. The only reason they offered peace is because they are afraid for the first time in their existence. If we let them retreat, they will spend the next 1,000 years preparing to destroy us. Velix was quiet for a moment. And if you are wrong, if they could change, then I will have committed genocide against a species capable of peace. Sarah's voice was flat. That possibility will haunt me for the rest of my life. But the alternative is risking the lives of every being in this galaxy on the hope that an enemy who has never shown mercy will suddenly develop it. You carry a heavy burden, Commander. That is why you gave it to me. Sarah finished her drink. The Council could not make this decision. Your species evolved for cooperation and compromise. Mine evolved for survival at any cost. You needed someone who could do what you could not. Velix's large eyes blinked slowly. The Council will support your decision, Commander. We trust your judgment, even if we do not fully understand it. After he disconnected, Sarah stood alone in her quarters for a long time. She thought about the war, about the deaths, about the choices she had made. Every night, she reviewed the casualty lists. Every name was a person who had trusted her to lead them to victory. 300,000 coalition soldiers had died under her command. 300,000 lives that she had spent like currency to buy victory. She knew she would spend more before this was over. The final campaign began 2 weeks later. Coalition intelligence had finally located the Prime Queen, the central consciousness that controlled all swarm activity. She was hidden at the heart of their territory, surrounded by a defensive fleet of over 50,000 ships and 200 queens. Sarah gathered every ship the Coalition could spare, 8,000 vessels from 37 species. It was the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history, and it would not be enough to win a straight fight. We are not going to fight straight, Sarah told her commanders in the final briefing. The swarm expects us to attack their defensive lines. Instead, we are going to go through them. She outlined her plan. A series of diversionary attacks would draw the swarm fleet out of position. Then the main force would make a hyperspace jump directly into the heart of swarm territory, emerging within weapons range of the Prime Queen's vessel. This is a suicide mission, Admiral Yesick observed. Even if we reach the Prime Queen, we will be surrounded by their entire fleet. Yes, Sarah agreed, which is why it will work. The swarm cannot conceive of an enemy willing to sacrifice everything for victory. They think in terms of preservation and expansion. They do not understand that some things are worth dying for. General Kreth rumbled his approval. The Thurok have a word for this. It translates roughly as glorious ending. We approve. I am not planning on ending, Sarah said, but I am planning on making the swarm believe we are. When they think we are trapped, when they bring all their forces to destroy us, that is when we strike at the Prime Queen. Kill her, and the entire swarm will fall apart. It will take years for them to recover if they ever do. The commanders looked at each other. They had followed Sarah through impossible battles, watched her lead from the front, seen her take risks that no sane commander would consider. They trusted her because she had earned that trust with blood and sacrifice. We are with you, Commander, Huntmaster Crix clicked, to the end. Sarah nodded, then let us finish this. The diversionary attacks began at dawn, Galactic Standard Time. Coalition forces struck at 6 different swarm positions simultaneously, drawing their defensive fleet into scattered engagements. The swarm responded as expected, pulling ships from their core territory to deal with each threat. When the defensive perimeter was at its weakest, Sarah gave the order. All ships jump. 8,000 ships vanished from normal space, reappearing seconds later in the heart of swarm territory. The transition was rough, the navigation dangerous, but Sarah had drilled her fleet relentlessly. They emerged in formation, weapons hot, pointed directly at the Prime Queen's massive vessel. All weapons fire. The opening volley was devastating. Thousands of missiles, energy beams, and nuclear warheads slammed into the swarm defensive line. Ships exploded by the dozen. Queens died in nuclear fire. For a glorious moment, the coalition fleet tore through the swarm like a blade through flesh. Then the swarm recovered. The battle became chaos. 50,000 swarm ships converged on the coalition fleet from every direction. The defensive formation collapsed as ships fought individual battles for survival. Sarah watched the tactical display as her forces were slowly surrounded, exactly as she had planned. All ships push forward, she commanded. Do not stop, do not defend, attack. The coalition fleet drove toward the Prime Queen's vessel like a spear. Ships died with every meter of progress. The Thurok dreadnoughts absorbed hits that should have destroyed them, their armor burning but their weapons still firing. The Krath fighters swarmed around the larger ships, sacrificing themselves to intercept missiles meant for the carriers. The Nexari assault ships punched through enemy lines, their crews fighting hand-to-hand with swarm drones that boarded them. And at the front of the formation, the human ships led the charge. "Commander," Lieutenant Yun reported, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. "We have lost 40% of our fleet. The swarm is closing from all sides." "Distance to the Prime Queen." 12,000 kilometers and closing. Sarah nodded. "Prepare all nuclear warheads, maximum yield. We are going to punch a hole." The remaining human ships formed up around the Defiance. They had started with 200 vessels. 60 remained, but those 60 carried enough nuclear firepower to destroy a continent. Fire. The volley was blinding. A wave of nuclear fire swept through the swarm defensive line, vaporizing everything in its path. Ships, drones, queens, all reduced to atoms in microseconds. When the light faded, there was a clear path to the Prime Queen's vessel. "All boarding teams launch now," Sarah ordered. "Everyone else, keep the swarm off us for as long as you can." The assault shuttle screamed toward the Prime Queen's ship. It was the largest organic vessel anyone had ever seen, a living mountain floating in space. Its surface crawled with defensive organisms, living weapons that fired at the approaching shuttles. Half the shuttles were destroyed before they reached the hull. Sarah's shuttle took a direct hit that killed 5 of her team, but the Nexari pilot kept them on course, driving the damaged vessel into the Prime Queen's flesh. "Move," Sarah gasped, pulling herself from the wreckage. Her arm was broken, her suit punctured in 3 places, but she was still alive, still fighting. "Move now." The boarding teams converged from multiple entry points, fighting through corridors that seemed designed to confuse and kill intruders. The inside of the Prime Queen's vessel was worse than any ship they had entered before. The walls pulsed with malevolent intelligence. The air itself seemed to fight them. Sarah led her team toward the central chamber, guided by scanners that could barely function in the hostile environment. They fought through waves of defenders, each one stronger than the last. The Prime Queen was throwing everything she had at them. It was not enough. The central chamber was vast, larger than any space Sarah had ever seen inside a ship, and at its heart sat the Prime Queen herself. She was ancient, her form twisted by millions of years of evolution. She controlled a consciousness that spanned billions of drones, thousands of queens, an empire of hunger that had consumed countless worlds. She looked at Sarah with eyes that held the wisdom of ages. "You are remarkable," the Prime Queen said, her voice echoing through the chamber. "In all our existence, we have never encountered a species like yours. You are weak. You are short-lived. You should be food, nothing more." Sarah raised her weapon, ignoring the pain from her broken arm. "And yet here I am." "Yes, here you are." The Prime Queen's form shifted, revealing layers of defensive organisms that protected her core consciousness. "We have studied your kind. We know your weakness. You care about each other. You sacrifice for each other. This makes you strong, but it also makes you vulnerable." Maybe, Sarah said, but it also means I am not alone. The other boarding teams burst into the chamber from every direction. Nexari warriors, Thurok soldiers, Krath commandos, Vorn engineers, human marines, 37 species united under a human commander facing the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known. You cannot kill me, the Prime Queen said. I am eternal, I am the swarm. You are a bug, Sarah replied, and we are exterminators. The final battle was brutal and short. The Prime Queen's defenders fought with desperate fury, but they were outnumbered and outmatched. The coalition soldiers had come too far, lost too much, to fail now. Sarah reached the Prime Queen's corps at the same moment as General Kreth and Hunt Master Crix. Together, they drove their weapons into the ancient creature's flesh. Human blade, Thurok axe, Nexari claws, 3 Deathworld species ending a threat that had existed for millions of years. The Prime Queen screamed. It was a sound that resonated through every swarm creature in the galaxy, a death cry that echoed across light years. And then she was silent. Outside, the effect was immediate. The swarm fleet stopped fighting. Drones began attacking each other, their hive minds shattered. Queens tried to take control, but without the Prime Queen's guiding intelligence, they could only manage small groups. The coordinated threat that had nearly destroyed the galaxy dissolved into chaos. All forces, this is Commander Chen, Sarah transmitted, her voice hoarse with exhaustion. The Prime Queen is dead. The war is over. We won. The cheering that erupted across the coalition fleet could be heard on every ship. Species that had been at war for centuries embraced each other. Enemies became brothers and sisters in victory. The galaxy had faced extinction and survived. Because of a human. Because of 37 Deathworld species who refused to surrender. Because the universe had finally met something more stubborn than it was. The celebrations lasted for weeks. Every world in the galaxy held festivals honoring the coalition forces. High Counselor Velix personally presented Sarah with the highest honor the council could bestow, a crystal medallion that represented the gratitude of 1,000 species. Sarah accepted it with quiet grace. She had lost half her fleet and over 2 million soldiers. The victory was real, but so was the cost. In her private quarters after the ceremony, she found Dr. Tanaka waiting with 2 glasses of sake. You saved the galaxy, Yuki said, handing her a glass. How does it feel? Sarah took the glass and stared at the liquid for a long moment. It feels like the beginning. The swarm is broken but not destroyed. There will be remnants to hunt. And now the galaxy knows what Deathworld species can do. Some will be grateful, others will be afraid. Always looking ahead, Yuki smiled. Can you not enjoy the victory for one night? Sarah considered this, then she raised her glass. To the fallen, every single one of them. To the fallen, Yuki echoed. They drank together in silence, 2 humans on a ship surrounded by alien allies, at the heart of a galaxy they had saved. The next morning, Sarah was back in the command center, planning the next operation. There were swarm remnants to track, damaged worlds to rebuild, and a coalition to maintain. The war was over, but the work had just begun. General Kreth found her there, reviewing reports. Commander, the Thurok delegation wishes to discuss permanent military alliance. As does the Vorn High Council, Ambassador Vix added, entering behind him, and the Krath Collective, and the Nexari Hunt Lords. Sarah looked up from her work, and the Council. The Council fears what we have created, Vix admitted. A coalition of Deathworld species, united and battle-tested. We could conquer the galaxy if we wished. We could, Sarah agreed, but we will not. That is not why we fight. Kreth made a sound that might have been a laugh. Then, why do we fight, Commander? Sarah stood and walked to the observation window. Beyond the glass, she could see ships from a dozen different species moving in formation. Once they had been enemies. Now they were family. We fight because it is what we are, she said. Every species in this coalition evolved on a world that tried to kill them. We learned to survive. We learned to endure. We learned that the universe is hostile and uncaring, and that the only way to live is to fight. She turned back to face her commanders. But we also learned something else. We learned that we are stronger together, that enemies can become allies, that the same stubbornness that keeps us alive can build something worth living for. The galaxy gave us a name, she continued, Deathworld Species. They meant it as an insult, but I think it is a badge of honor. We come from death. We are forged by death, and we will face death together for as long as the universe exists. General Kreth bowed his massive head. The Thurok are honored to stand with you, Commander. As are the Vorn, Ambassador Vix added. Sarah smiled, and this time it was genuine. Then let us get to work. We have a galaxy to protect. And so the Deathworld Coalition continued, led by a small human woman who had united the most dangerous species in the galaxy. The swarm was defeated. The council was safe. And the universe had learned a valuable lesson. Never underestimate humanity. Because humans do not just survive, they do not just endure, they win. At any cost, against any odds, no matter how long it takes. Humanity wins.